It's a time for more packages from China. Let's go. These mini PCs, we have all kinds of different versions and I've reviewed many of them. But actually there are, in my opinion, two different ways that we can go to. So one great example is over here with this AMD Ryzen. So this is an older version, the 6900HX, and this is an AMD Ryzen 9, and this is absolutely a powerhouse. And because this is already a 6 model, they are getting sometimes in sales and having not an expensive product in compared with the new models, but have some overall crazy performance. I mean, when you're going to be looking into emulation, yeah, we can do some overall good upscaling. And don't get me wrong, this is not like a super cheap to the cheap option. This is still a very expensive product to buy. However, in the future, maybe in some random sale, you can pick one up and still have an overall fun time with emulation performance. And that is one of the reasons I just wanted to showcase, because in the beginning of the video I said already, we're getting newer versions, the older ones are getting cheaper, and where they were like the most expensive ones, they are still great for emulation, as particularly when you're going to be doing some little bit upscaling to 4K and higher. So this was actually the most powerful retro gaming machine they released from the Super Console X line. However, this was just a mini PC you can also buy separately, and that's the reason I wanted to focus on the mini PCs, because this particular solution has also been upgraded, and also bought that one too, and I did some crazy cool emulation and gaming on these devices. But what China does, we can also do it ourselves, and I mean particularly when it comes to adding some Zero to it, because that is the thing they're doing. So this G6 Super Console X was very expensive, and I just wanted to pick it up anyway. However, when you're going to be looking at the PC, the design was quite nice, but specification wise, so this thing, I love the design, but it has like an overall, let's say, an older i9 9th generation 8 core in it with a GTX 1650. This is going to be enough for a lot of emulation, but yeah, one of the things, let's do a quick look in the inside, and here you can just actually see there is just a simple 2TB platter disk in here that has the Zero. And that is one of the things, you can just make them yourself and slap them into a mini PC and have the same result, having your own Super Console X. And that is actually not the same amount of money as this particular one, or maybe it is, but you're getting like maybe 10 times the performance. However, depending how you're going to be building it and where you're getting your mini PC, of course. Let's do a chit chat about making your own Zero drive. If you're going to be combining this, for example, with this random mini PC, yeah, you can just build yourself a retro emulation beast, and a very powerful one. So you can combine Zero with so far almost anything when it comes to Windows based or x86 devices, but you do have different kind of versions out there. So we're having over here a different kind of, let's say, storage capacity. So yep, we can use a 3.5 drive, platter disk 2.5, an SSD, and USB stick. If it's a storage device, you can actually use it, convert it to Linux Zero, and you can just plug it into the PC, and we just have the option to emulate or build yourself an image and emulate all kinds of games. And if you're going to be doing this with a very expensive device, yeah, in this case, we can build ourselves a very cool machine that can play, so far I understand, anything. However, so it depends what kind of storage you're going to be picking, because the platter disks are still very cheap to get. So let's say 2TB are like new, not expensive. So of course a thumb drive is more like a plug and play solution you can bring with you. But like an SSD or a micro SD card, they are like super expensive compared with a platter disk. So take your pick, but if you want to spend a lot of money, you can get yourself an SSD or get a platter disk, and they're like really cheap. And you get like massive storage, and you're going to be needing it if you're having a lot of games like PlayStation 1. You can use an external enclosure, for example, just install Zero there, and you can just plug it in through the USB port. Recommended, of course, in 3.0. Then we're having all kinds of plug and play solutions, like in Kinhank hard drive. You can just plug it in, configure this on your PC, and you're just ready to go. A very cool and easy way. Or we're having these complete kits even, and with this nice case, by the way. Yeah, it comes with a hard drive, but also with controllers. The controllers itself depends where and what you're going to be buying. Not the biggest fan of these things, because they're like fake PlayStation 2 controllers with no rumble function, and some of them are just having a chemical smell. They do implement a nice manual explaining how you need to set it up. If you have any problems with the controllers or anything else, everything has been, let's say, put in the manual. But of course there are a lot of, let's say, tutorials out there that explain all kinds of things. Enough chit chat about this, let's get back to the PCs and let's see what we can get. when it comes to most expensive retro emulation machines and plug it in with some cool hard drives and some Botacera. But getting into the most expensive, yeah, that was actually one of the most expensive gaming PC emulator retro devices I actually picked up. So this was an i9 and 12th generation with an RTX 3050 in the inside, and the 3050 was, by the way, also in a TI. However, they also have now a 4060, and later on in the future is going to be having more power for the same amount of money actually. However, this i9 was a quite nice powerhouse when it comes for emulation and performance itself. Well, of course, this thing comes with Windows built in, so if you're not going to be using the Botacera drive, you can actually play some really cool AAA titles. When it comes to an indie games or an old school games like Saints Row 4, yeah, you can actually play a lot of cool stuff on higher, let's say, graphics with 1080p and do a little bit of tweaking maybe to 2 or 4K, but I wouldn't really recommend it with a mini PC like this.
Turn around when it is safe to do so.
Starting off with some PlayStation 2 and my favorite game, Tekken 4. Nevertheless, we're having absolutely amazing overall performance with PlayStation 2, and you can even upscale it to higher resolutions if you want to without any problem. So what is really convenient if you're going to be loading up PlayStation 3 games with such a powerful chip, the loading times are so significantly shorter compared to, let's say, the low-end chips I've checked out in the past. And also when it comes to the resolution, here we can even upscale it a little bit and getting amazing PlayStation 3 emulation performance. PlayStation Portable, no restrictions, we can put it in the highest setting and everything set to the maximum level to make these games look absolutely stunning. But maximum power and even newer chips are having overall better performance. If you're having an Xbox Classic or you want to even do a little bit of an Xbox 360 emulation, those systems will run perfectly or even better in the future. Of course, we're having already some emulator updates throughout the years, so we're also going to be better performance on these lower end or older chips. So in overall, I think it's quite cool to see what you can do, and with the most powerful PC, yeah, we can play all kinds of emulation to a point that we have no limitations at all. But with a lot of power, we have so many cool emulation possibilities. With the Emulator for Dreamcast, we can even put it on the highest settings, no problem whatsoever. But if you're going to have an AMD Ryzen, because they are quite common nowadays in mini PCs compared with the Intel and the Nvidia, and of course price point technical, like say the B-Links are quite expensive. For example, with this GTR, a very nice mini PC. This is the 7840HS, but the overall result in emulation is just stunning. And yeah, what I mentioned before, this is another example where we're having older chips and we do still have like crazy overall performance where we can upscale all the way up to 4K random resolution with many platforms. Having PlayStation 2 emulation on higher resolution, it's absolutely nuts. However, there are so many different PCs out there, but the B-Link are more like a quality and a common one. So if you're searching for something that is maybe a little bit more reliable or having full warranty, if you're going to be buying this from the B-Link itself or in like an Amazon or some kind, yeah, we can actually do that with B-Link and still have an overall great performance at AMD Ryzen. But yeah, they're absolutely in the most expensive, let's say, retro emulation devices, because these B-Links, in particular the high end, are going to be very expensive.